I think the bigger question needs to be asked, KJ, how did we actually get here in Canadian soccer?
Yeah, and, you know, look, we've been blessed to talk about this great game for a long time, play the game, and, you know, I've still got, like, a pit in my stomach. Like, this has been a sickening week for all of us, and I just hope those people watching at home can just be patient with us as we try and find the right tone and words here. It's not easy. You know, I'm not an expert in talking about a lot of this stuff, but I'm going to try and convey my opinions and my sources and different things as well. So just please, I wish people would bear with us because we do genuinely care so much about the sport, you know. So, you know, I'll start there. You know, it's heartbreaking to be in this position to talk about this once again in a negative way with the sport and this country that we all love so dearly. How do we get here? I think my immediate reaction to that is arrogance, self-entitled selfishness from certain individuals, no care and compassion for people. First of all, leaders who were trusted to really set a culture and take care of people within that culture and to do what's right. And that's how we got here in a way. That's certainly how the investigation continued. Ultimately, the people who were found guilty of this, certainly the one in charge of this responsibility this week, had the opportunity to come out and explain immediately. And instead, I think, took a little bit of an opportunity to say that, you know, stepping back for that one game was a big moment and that they should be almost applauded for it, in my opinion. And I didn't think that was right. At that moment, when we in the game knew of other people, certainly one individual who was in jail at the time, I think that the entire process needed to be better at that moment. And because it subsequently wasn't, and the person in charge should have come out and admitted more that they knew, then an investigation took place. And internally, that investigation only took place because people who knew more subsequently needed that more things to come out immediately.
I know I reacted that way when Priestman originally came out and took herself out of the game. And it seemed like, I'm not sure if it was her intention or not, was throwing the other coach or coaches under the bus. And in Canadian football, despite everything that's going on, people stand up for their own. And I don't think that that sat right. And I think that that's why you found so many people within Canadian soccer willing to speak on this issue. This happens in moments when there's real hurt and concern. And I don't think that it was people coming out and having their say was to be malicious in any way. I think it was to be protective, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, for sure. I think my one little piece on that, Wheels, is the lack of accountability. I think in difficult moments, I think that's when leaders rise to the occasion, right? You can look at it, whether it be a captain, whether it be if you're a head coach of a national team squad, there are moments, and it's tough, but there are moments when you have to do the right thing and have that integrity. And for me, personally, just looking at this past week, I don't think that was at the forefront of certain people's minds.
It was clear right away. The first sentiment that was shared after that, KJ, was that, no, droning like this or spying like this is being taken place for some time. That was the first thing that people were clear. Then prime examples were shared and were publicly documented and put out there. What do you make of the process and what was said and where things went after that?
Yeah, very, very unsatisfactory is what I make of it. Again, disappointed in this country a little bit, understanding that I certainly don't want to sit here and think that I know it all. I'll just say, as a privileged person who's got to cover this game for a long time, what Canada are alleged to have done is absolutely not normal in this sport, okay? Countries are not flying drones over other countries' training sessions in the middle of the European Championships, which just happened, or fundamentally any club football at the highest level in Europe on a consistent basis. Yet that became a topic of conversation in this country by other areas of the media for at least 72 hours. Well, other countries have done it. Should be, you know, ultimately, that is an appalling way to look at something that is illegal. First of all, is morally corrupt and is frankly cheating. You know, so whether other countries are doing it or not has got nothing to do with it, but then this is not prevalent in the world's game, okay? It is absolutely not. Yes, it's happened. I've seen other major media members refer to this as not being unusual. It is absolutely unusual to do this, the amount of times that Canada have been alleged to have done this. That has to be stressed, first of all, because for me, that is the most important thing to say, that this topic is the biggest sports story in Canada this week. I've heard it everywhere. Everybody's talking about it. And there are those of us who have been in the game for a long time, have the the privilege to be able to talk about this, must educate those others who haven't had that opportunity but are interested in learning more that this is not normal. They have to know that, because it puts into context the genuinely seriousness of all of this. That yes, it may well have been done by a few other countries, and everyone talks about Bielsa, who admitted it and owned up to it, but it doesn't make it right, and it absolutely isn't normal.
People talk about margins, right, in football, and I know this as a former player. Foam rolling was huge, 5% here, 3% there, gets you ready for a match. At the end of the day, if you're looking or spying or cheating, I totally agree with you, KJ, on another nation, another team, that for me comes from insecurity. You focus on your group and what you have to do to go and achieve. You're not watching, you're not spying, you're not coloring outside the lines to try to gain advantage. You want to do everything that is ethically correct to go and give you those percentages. But anything outside of that, for me, is cheating.
I didn't also like the fact that some people in this country took it as an opportunity to say it's not what Canadians do. And I think we have to ask ourselves, what do we stand for as Canadians, and what does Canada Soccer and what does this country stand for at the moment? Because it's a hard look in the mirror. A very hard, difficult look in the mirror. We have to be careful when Canadians stand on a high moral ground and say, that's not what we stand for as Canadians, regardless of what other people do it. This is our country doing it right now. We have no business pointing to others saying, we do not stand for that as Canadians. We do not stand for it anyway. Loads of other countries who've been at a wonderful record in this country, in this sport, countries have never done it. So why do we go on this and start saying this is not what Canadians stand for? What do Canadians actually stand for during this time? Because if you look at it, this has not been a good few years for what actually Canadians stand for in terms of ethic behavior, how the people are treating people. The person who's continued to work the hardest on this story and investigate this and get the truth out has been lambasted on social media to a point where it's borderline torture for that person. Other people inside this sport have been messaging him. People with, in my belief, I've got sources saying that families of players have been messaging this. And you know what? There's a lot of division in the media in this country. So I'm going to say it's TSN and it's Rick Westhead, and the work that person has done for the last few days has got this story out. Without that person's work, and then we have the ability to say, oh, we as Canadians don't stand for it. Well, go and have a look at social media and let's talk to Rick Westhead and see what he's gone through over the last 48 hours to truly find out what Canadians stand for, because it's not good.
I want to get to the punishment in a while, but the question will continue to be asked. Clearly, this wasn't an isolated incident. So how is this being enabled to go on for so long? I mean, that's what it fundamentally gets down to here. How were the coaches of our men's and women's national team allowed this to continue? I mean, the focus for me that is being then cast on the players in the scenario, when you're presented information, there's a trust, there's a certain relationship between a coach and a player. What are they supposed to do? Look away and not take in the information that their coaching staff is giving them? Like, the fact that this went on, I'm very sympathetic to the players here, because they've been put in a position where they simply cannot win. And these are by adults, by the people that you're supposed to trust the most in the situation. Yet, they were allowed to continue for doing this for the better part of a decade, Jordan.
The last bit I'll focus on, the power dynamic between a coach and a player is crucial. It's almost a parent and child in some respects. I don't know many people, and I ask myself this question in this situation. If you're a player and your coach is showing you something, and maybe you're saying the way that it's happening is if it's cheating and whatnot, if you're going to go and say to that player, like, I don't want to see this. I think that you're asking a lot of a player in a situation. When you're a player and you're trying to go and prepare for a match, you're trying to do everything that's needed within the lines and confines of the game to get ready for it. And you're looking at that coach to just be that person that you do go and trust. Also, I'll just be bigger than that. If you're a starter on the team, if you're a leader, you're still trying to get minutes and play. You don't really want to go in a situation where you rub your coach the wrong way. So for me, the people that should be accountable for this situation are the ones at the top. And when you talk about, as well, having so many years and so many instances where this could carry on, for me, that is just an environment where you enable people to do what they want to do. And that's something we need to take a real look at as well.
The power dynamic that coaches have within a group setting, and the number of coaches, like there was 18 staff members in France under Bev Priestman, KJ. But there was a power dynamic also within Canadian soccer where John Herdman and Bev Priestman hold an incredible amount of power. And there's been plenty of reporting of ways that the allegations of cheating and spying have played out, and some of the tactics and some of the way that it's played out. But these two individuals were extremely powerful within this organization.
We've talked about this without knowledge of this before, about the power that was given to the head coaches of these national teams. And I think I used the word unprecedented maybe even a year ago, and it really was. It was unprecedented, the amount of power that these people were given. And I think now, as you know, we start to believe that there really is a chance for a new Canadian soccer under the direction of new people and Peter Agruso and Kevin Blue. I think they have the right to go back and look at those things and talk to certain individuals within that. This certainly allows them to do that. John Herdman has publicly stated, by the way, that he would do that. To go back and to not only find out the root of this cause, but to also to find out what went badly wrong within that culture and to ensure that it would never happen again. You know, these are times where I keep hearing this is the greatest time for soccer in this country. In many ways, it's the worst time. You know, this is a really very difficult time. And we've got to make sure that we take these moments, because this story will die down. This story is not even getting talked about in the world of football anymore. It moves fast, okay? The Olympic Games are happening, and rightfully so. But when this story starts to internationally slow down, we cannot let that story die down domestically here. Every stone has to be uncovered, because they have to ensure what was once set and was wrong needs to be changed. And I think that's what is the most unsettling thing for me in my stomach at the moment, is just how many people are hurt by this. And you mentioned it, you know, I'm gutted for players, absolutely gutted for the players, because not only because I firmly believe that they have every right to believe that they're emotionally, you know, the lack of trust that they had in these people, that they now have in these people, how will that impact them going forward with scars of coaches? You know, we can all talk about the fact that they firmly believe they didn't cheat, and they have every right to that. But why would these competitive advantage drones continue to be flown? Because they continue to get a benefit from them. So whether, I'm not talking about the players, the people who authorize them, right? So if you're a player and a coach comes up to you and says, I need you to do this to this fullback, they have a tendency to come in here, how can you not start to go back and repeat those conversations and think, where did you get that information from? Is that from legit Y scouts and scouting properly, or did you get that from a drone yesterday that you didn't want to show me? How can you not? So this is the issue that you come back to when you talk about the 6-point, you know, suspension, and some people saying it's unfair. When you're on the wrong side of the law, whether you're innocent or not, you are not a victim. You're connected by association to what has happened. And whether they believe they cheated or not, and I know that they believe they didn't, and we all hope that's the case, no one can sit here and say that none of them was gaining a competitive advantage. Right. We cannot do that. And you talk to federations, and I've talked to people internationally the last few days, every single one of them believes that Canada did gain a competitive advantage. And that's what hurts. And also the fact that those players, and in particularly the young, impressionable staff, and the way that they were molded into believing that this was the right thing to do to gain an advantage over things, is sickening. And this is why this needs to come out, to show that this is not the right thing to do, regardless of whether you're on a high moral ground of being a Canadian. In football, in life, it is not the right thing to do, and hopefully we can move forward.
That was another debate, KJ, whether the punishment was too harsh that was levied towards Canada. Based upon what you're saying, you don't believe it is, or
no,
was?
I just have a very hard time when something like this is committed to believe that then we should start to argue about that. And you know, for me, the players have answered back, and I would say that they've got the 6 points back and go out and win the game.
They're not out of it.
Go out and go win the game against Colombia. Good luck to you, and go get a gold medal. Right? This is what I would.
And I totally get that, KJ. But I think as a player as well too, if your coach or the coaching staff is doing something and they're gaining advantage and they're cheating, I'm looking at a situation as well, and I'm like, I'm a player. This is my job to play. Like, we shouldn't be getting points deducted, but it's an argument that we'll have forever, for sure.
You know me, I love you, buddy. But the one thing I would say about that is that you're guilty by association, right?
Like, and that's why you're trusting the leaders that you have.
George Russell just won the Belgian Grand Prix today.
Yeah.
He's got his win taken off him 3 hours later because his car was 1.5 pounds underweight. He didn't know his car was underweight. Okay, he gained a slight advantage, right? But he got his trophy taken away from him, and he got his points taken away from him. It wasn't his fault. Yeah. He trusted his team to make sure. There's lots of cases of associations, you know, where they've let these other players down in these regards, and unfortunately, you just have to take your punch.
I want to talk about being truthful. I want to talk about character here. Because at the crux of this all, I mean, we live in a world today where rightfully people are cynical of what is the truth and what isn't the truth. But being caught lying when you're representing a federation, the players, the entire Canadian soccer community, all the athletes at the Olympics is just not right. One of the reasons that more information is coming out that we're being told is that the Canadian staff requested to bring their drones to France and were denied by the Canadian Olympic Committee. And they brought them anyways and did something illegal, which led the paper trail for them to be caught red-handed. Then to go and say that you didn't have any knowledge of what was happening, it's a downright lie, which Ben Priestman has been caught right in the middle of. I just wonder what may be next now for John Herdman, the former head coach of both the women's and men's national team. He was speaking while working at Toronto FC, had the Leagues Cup. Didn't really have to talk about the Leagues Cup, so there was no threat of any fine speaking out against it because he spoke about everything but the Leagues Cup. Here's what he said about any allegations of cheating under his watch.
I've always gone into Olympic Games, World Cups, big events with integrity in mind and the ability to compete at the highest level, following the rules and processes. So, from my side, as I say, I'll help Canada Soccer where I can with that review, but I'm highly confident that in my time as a head coach at an Olympic Games or World Cup, we've never been involved in any of those activities.
It's a difficult spot for Herdman to be in, but based upon the allegations and reports that have come out since, I know other sources have come out and claimed that Canada were actually warned about potential droning in and around the last World Cup in Doha. I mean, KJ, again, it's a slippery slope. And if you come out and you aren't truthful, people are there because other reputations are on the line. It's just something where it seems so basic that we should tell the truth and own up to our mistakes. But right now, potentially not telling the truth can lead to a whole other scenario, a whole bunch of other things that could come out and be at play here. It's a slippery slope. I hate to say it because it sounds so cliche, but that's what it is.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I find it hard to relate. I would just say that I think some people have a hard time doing that when they're given complete autonomy and they don't have to answer to anybody. There is that level of I can do whatever I want and say whatever I want and not be questioned on things. I certainly think that's the case. I'm happy that he's going to be speaking to Canada Soccer, and I really hope this independent review is as thorough as possible. There are other members of his staff at Toronto FC. These are not disappearing. They can be spoken to and should be. Jason DeVos was the General Secretary of Canada, worked for both men's and women's teams. All of these people can enlighten Canada Soccer into what the real truth is. And that's what we just need to find out. What is the real truth? And, I've heard a lot of things over the last few weeks and few days about it's another major setback for Canadian soccer and Canada Soccer in general. I disagree. I believe firmly that this had to come out. And there's a lot of people in the international game that knew that of this happening. You're hearing it more and more, U.S. soccer and what they were saying. Canada's reputation was appalling amongst some of these nations for certain individuals' actions. This absolutely had to come out, and it gives the opportunity now for everybody to move forward under new leadership, people that I do believe genuinely care about the sport. But there are a lot of self-entitled, quite frankly, there's a lot of charlatans who work in Canadian soccer in this country who are in it for themselves and themselves only. And we've got to have a chance to try and get rid of people who are not interested in being compassionate, care deeply about people and the sport in this country. And this is the chance. And if it's not taken now, then we're never going to have a better opportunity to be able to do this.
I second that sentiment. And when having a clean slate, I think that's where you grow from. But also, I think learning a valuable lesson, right? I think if you go into a position where you're given the keys to have the whole dominion and have everything, your ego could easily take over. Easily. If we're in a position where you can run things and no one's keeping you accountable, easily take over. So now when you're looking at Canada Soccer and moving forward, you want to have steps. You want to have people that you can turn to when you're making decisions. You can't just have free reign over things because we're going to have more situations like that. I think for the talent that we have in this country, the way that we love football, we need to be pure. We need to do it the right way, and integrity needs to be at the forefront.
We've all been involved in the sport in this country for decades now, in very different ways. What hurt, and it's different from the people that are personally involved in this, which has been an absolute nightmare. But just hearing, oh, this is just Canadian soccer again. And this is something that we and others have committed our lives to. This is not how we want to be reflected as a soccer community. And quite frankly, what we've gone through the last 5 days is different than a lot of the issues in the past. Someone told me years ago, what Canada Soccer, the association, needed more than anything else is more resources, more structure, more talented people in it. That's what we need. We need guardrails up here. So it's not just a couple head coaches that are dictating where the entire association goes. It's less about me, KJ, and more about we. Yeah. And sometimes you need to go through these dark times to end up in a better place. We've seen incredible turnover in the executive and the board of Canadian soccer. Some of the problems have already been weeded out. That is the hope through this very, very dark moment, that something like this will never, ever happen again, because we are not like that. We are not like those individuals, and they will be the ones that inevitably need to face the consequences.
The culture has to change,
100%.
and we have to get people in there who are willing to listen more than they are willing to speak.